All right, we are live with the final pick of the 2021 NFL Draft for the Patriots. They went ahead and selected wide receiver Tre Nixon out of UCF with the 242nd pick overall. 6 foot, 187, 190 pounds. Missed a couple games last year due to a shoulder injury. Ole Miss transfer, but of everything that I've seen of him, he looks like an explosive threat down the field. He had a good 40, good 3-cone. What do you think about him, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about him in terms of on the field, but the athletic profile is exactly what you want out of a 7th-round pick, right? His RAS was just under a 9.0. He was 257th out of over 2,500 wide receivers from 1987 through this year. 40 time was good. Size is okay. It's not great. It's big enough, though. He had a good broad jump. He's explosive, good 3-cone, which we know they value. So, I mean, in terms of round 7 dart throws at wide receiver, it's exactly what you'd want. The athlete that fits the thresholds that your team looks for. So, I'll take it.
Right, yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that really stuck out to me was no special teams experience, not even really as a returner or anything like that. So that's surprising just because, me and Pat talked about last time we were on, pretty much everybody they select on day 3 plays special teams. Like Even the offensive linemen, if they make the team, they work in on the kick, the field goal units. So pretty interesting that he's not a special teams guy. I would assume they have at least an idea that he can play special teams.
Right.
If not, I'd be shocked that they made this pick because there were other guys available who do have special teams value. So, one of the things that came to mind for me too was 7th round wide receiver. You're not really expecting them to make a roster, but if he does stick on the practice squad, he's got a good RAS. He's a good athlete. Imitate receivers from whatever team you're going to be facing the next week, and really just serve as a piece to help teach the defense. I think somebody else pointed that out. Let me go find that.
Right.
Taylor Kyles pointed that out on Twitter. So at the very least, you're getting a good guy, a guy who can serve a purpose, during the week and help the team get better.
Right. And if you look at, just a different 7th-round pick that popped into my head, obviously not Julian Edelman, but like a recent 7th-round pick that popped into my head was like Devin Lucien a few years ago. And if you look at like his RAS, he was, a very average athlete, had a decent 3-cone and 20-yard split in the 40-yard dash. And that was about it. So if you're looking to take shots and dart throws in the 7th round, you're looking at kind of those raw, maybe position changes or, late to football, like a Julian Edelman played quarterback in college, moving to wide receiver. Maybe you're getting at the very beginning of the development curve, or you're looking at those transcendent athletes who maybe had an injury pop up, had, for whatever reason, just never got really going in college. And you're hoping to unlock something with their athleticism at the NFL level. He looks like a lot like the latter. Obviously we all wanted them to be taking a wide receiver in this class. They seem to have stayed away from it in general. Evan Lazar made a good point on Twitter earlier today where they seem to acknowledge that it's a bit of a weak spot in their drafting because of what they expect. It's really hard to find college wide receivers who do the things that they look for. So they're taking dart throws a lot of the times. So it looks like they're starting to make a conscious decision where, okay, we know we're not great at this because of the blind spots that we have. So let's just stay away from it and we'll make our dart throws in dart throw range. And that's what this is. So I'm glad they took one. I hope they sign another one in undrafted free agency here. I know they don't have a ton of spots, but if Dark Blue Gold just said, seems like a good athlete, also thinks that Folk is the kicker for a while. It seems like this would mean Folk's the kicker for this year, but there were like 4 or 5 draftable kickers and only one's gone so far. So
we had more long snappers going.
Right, we've had
and punters.
Yeah,
so
combined.
McCheese or whatever his last name was.
So I would hope, obviously they don't have a lot of undrafted free agent spots. I'd want another wide receiver in the mix and I'd want a kicker in the mix. Just looking forward to that now that their day is done. But
I think right now they only have 4 roster spots to fill. So
yeah, it's either 4 or 5.
4 or 5. So Riley Patterson is the kicker that a lot of us would have in mind. Comes from kicker U, where Memphis, where Steven Gostkowski went. So I assume they'd either pick up a kicker or really just take dart throws with the best athletes available. There are a lot of wide receivers who I would have expected to be drafted by now, like Cade Johnson, Dax Milne, Tamorion Terry.
Mel Kiper seemed a lot higher on Sage Surratt than was ever
Right.
reasonable to expect. But he had a lot of hype last year, and then I believe he sat out this year. Now that's a guy that's not a great athlete, but if you're looking for like a Jacoby Myers shadow, that might be him in undrafted free agency. So we'll see.
Lots of options in undrafted free agency, just not a lot of spots to really fill them up with. So we talked about Nixon. He was our last one. I didn't have you on with me and Pat earlier when we were talking about the other picks. Do you have any thoughts on those guys that went earlier?
I mean, Cam McGrone was like the most obvious Patriots pick ever, right? You and Spags were all over it each of the last 2 weeks that we did Patriots mock drafts on the mock draft show. We were looking at him in like the round. I think we took him in the third round, right?
Third round,
one of them. So getting him in the fifth, that's good value. Even if he doesn't work out, I like him better than Jawan Bentley, and therefore better than Terez Hall. So we'll see what Raekwon McMillan does. We'll see what he does, and hopefully, that linebacker depth is there. That definitely wasn't last year. I liked Ramondre Stevenson a lot out of Oklahoma. A fourth round non-pass catching running back surprised me, but it makes complete sense that they liked him. So, and I liked him. I'm a big contact balance guy when it comes to running backs. That's why I was so high on Alvin Kamara coming out a few years ago. And I think it's the most important trait for a running back, and he's got it in spades. So I'll take that all day. Not a whole lot of takes on the 6th round guys. I don't know much about him. I know Joshua had the H added to his name so that he could have 7 letters because that's what his whole family does. So, yay. But, it was a solid day overall. It was a solid day. A couple names that I was looking for ended up going there. Watching Shi Smith just fall and not pick him a few times was rough, but you're always going to get that on day 3. So it's nothing that I'm going to be too upset with.
Yeah, I mean, the big kind of overall theme of the day for them was setting up for the future. And I think that's kind of the big theme of the whole draft. Barmore's probably the only guy that I see having a big role right away.
Yeah.
But on day 3 alone, Stevenson's not going to be your early or your number 1 back right away. He's probably going to be number 3 if Sony Michel stays on the roster.
And he's probably the easiest path to snaps, just given Sony and Damien's injury history. And also the fact that he has that. He's such a bowling ball that even if he's still learning, and he was pretty proficient in pass protection pass protector, so he has a path to stealing some snaps, especially if we get an injury early to Sony or Damien, which we should probably be expecting at this point in their careers based on what we've seen. But yeah, it definitely was a draft where it screamed, free agency was where they decided to fill out their 2021 impact players. And this was, okay, now we need to decide a lot of 2-year contracts, a lot of older players, and we need to start looking at the future there. And that's what the draft was for, which is a good position to be in for a team that's not, necessarily great right now, to still be, deep enough and well-rounded enough that you don't have any glaring needs entering the draft is a rare situation. So, yeah.
And just to finish off, they've got McGrone, who's going to probably be looking to take over a lot of snaps on the inside role, but not for a couple of years. Bledsoe, who I think his ceiling is probably as the 3rd safety. William Sherman, whose ceiling is probably as the 8th offensive lineman, a guy who can play probably all 4 spots other than center. And then, Tre Nixon, who knows? He's an athlete. We'll see what we can do with him if you're the Patriots. So those were the picks. They made... 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks overall throughout the 3 days. Before we get out of here, what are your thoughts? What's your grade on the overall draft?
I'm going to kind of work through this player by player real quick because and then I'll kind of come to my final one there. Mac Jones, I'm going to set at a solid B. I was in a B- range initially. I'll bump it up a little bit just because, again, they seem to have a plan. I like the Barmore pick. I didn't love the Barmore trade compensation, but you get a player that we all kind of expected to end up here more likely than not. And you give up picks that we already knew were going to be excess anyway. So you live with it. That's like a B+. Ronnie Perkins is probably my favorite pick of the draft for them. So I would give that B+, A-. And then these day 3 guys are kind of a mix of, B to incomplete because it's just a complete dart throw. So I think, a B, I think is a fair grade for today. It's a lot for the future guys. It's a lot of, we'll see how they fit on this team type of guys. I think I'm pretty confident in Barmore, Perkins, and Stevenson contributing to this team within like 2 years.
Right.
And you obviously hope that Mac Jones does as well, and then the rest are dart throws. But when those guys that I listed, that's your first 4 picks. That's really the ones that you're taking, expecting to do something. So I'll live with it.
And before the draft even started, after free agency, they pretty much had like 44 roster spots filled with guys who were going to make the team. So there's not a whole lot of competition going on in training camp. And if there is, it's going to be surprising, to say the least, some of the guys that are probably going to get cut. So they didn't have a ton of spots. He does have speed. They didn't have a ton of spots to really fill in terms of guys who are going to make the team and contribute right away. So like you said, guys who are going to contribute into the future, the 4 at the top, probably going to have a role on this team. And then as you get further, it's guys that maybe surprise you and sneak their way onto the roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if only 4 of these guys made the team, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
Depending on what they think of Jalen Mills as a safety, or whether or not they want to keep him at corner kind of full time, we'll wait and see. But other than that, with the Nixon pick and William Sherman, that those are guys who are going to need to do a lot to make the team. So I'd say B- overall in the draft, but that's just because the team was already pretty much set and there wasn't a whole ton you could do to fit guys on the roster. The top 4, I really like the top 4. I think I've sold myself on Jones a little bit more than where I was night 1. As I said, I was broken on night 1.
Clip of the night.
Yeah, I think he's got a good shot to, especially with a year in the system, to really learn and kind of come in and take over after Newton's gone. And then I love the Barmore pick, right away. I wasn't even mad at the trade up for him, just because of the defensive tackles that you have on your roster. You've got a lot of 4-3 interior defensive linemen and not a lot of 3-4 interior defensive linemen. And Barmore has shown in the past that he can rush the passer from the 1 tech. So that's huge. That's what they needed, and they addressed that need.
And he had the highest pressure rate of any interior defensive lineman over the past 2 years in college football by like a lot. It was like 19%. Yeah. And Javon Kinlaw, who went 14th overall, 13th overall last year to the Niners, was at like 13%, and he was second.
He was the best interior pass rusher in the country as a redshirt freshman. So there's the talent is there, no doubt about it. Love the McGrone pick. Like you said, me and Spags were all over that one. That guy had Patriot written on his forehead. And then Stevenson, he was another guy. When you saw him pass protect at the Senior Bowl, you were like, Bill Belichick's going to be interested in this guy, because other than James White, they don't have a guy who can protect the passer. They really don't. Sonny Michel has not shown the ability to be able to do it, and Damian Harris wasn't asked to do it because when he was in the game, he ran the ball last year. Yep. So a guy who can come in and fill a need right away.
Not that it should be seen as like the end of the world or anything, but that might officially kind of mark the end of the Rex Burkhead era. Obviously, they're different players overall, but that's Rex Burkhead has the change of pace. Can you put him in? You don't know whether he's going out on a route or pass protecting or running the ball, because he can do all 3. Stevenson's someone who can do all 3. He's a bigger guy, but he's still a solid pass catcher. He's not, he's not like a pass catching like expert. He's not James White where that's going to be his primary role, but you can put him on the field and you can still throw a pass to him without wasting the down. So I think that might be the role that gets filled there.
He's LeGarrette Blount, but he doesn't have cement hands and feet. He's got soft hands. He can catch the ball a little bit. So overall, like the draft, Ryan gave it a B. I'm giving it a B-. The top half was really great in my opinion, and then it kind of tailed off in the back half, but we all expected that. So we'll leave you guys with that for the night. That's our last instant analysis pod that will go out. I believe Pat will throw it up as a podcast, so you guys will be able to listen later. Even if you're in here, you didn't get to catch all of it. So we will see you guys the next time that we have an event like this and we go live. See ya.